Right, so let's expand on this issue of informal settlements in the country, with a focus perhaps on Gauteng, with the Premier promising to crack down on illegal settlements in the province. He's promised demolitions to tackle illegal land grabs. We discussed this with Lawyers for Human Rights, his very own Mr. Mamelodi, and Abahlali Basemjondolo's Deputy President, Mr. Mqapheli Bonono. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is probably one of the more difficult conversations in South Africa, because there's the discussion around whether we provide services to informal settlements, but also at the same time there's the question of the desperate need for people to have land and homes. And so we'll get into that. But the South African Human Rights Commission, Mr. Sebe, today holding a press briefing, and of course they've responded as well to the Premier's comments around demolitions of informal settlements. The Premier says we're going to demolish some of these informal settlements at 2 a.m., he says. And the South African Human Rights Commission has taken issue with that. But let's start here. Today they hold a press briefing wherein they talk about just how many reports it is that they receive. They say in the past financial year, 2,300 complaints that the Human Rights Commission has received, many of them having to do with the government struggling to provide healthcare, food, and water. I mentioned that to you when you said no surprises there.
No surprises, as I said, because these are realities of ordinary, particularly black working class people in this country. The level of poverty has, deepened to that of hunger and starvation. And people are dying in this country. I mean, I was reading the report today that says over 84% of young people, that is people between 15 and 35, right, are earning less than 6,000 rand a month. And obviously what it means is that many of them, actually they were saying 4 in 5 of them have reported skipping up a meal, right? And you're talking about not the most vulnerable of people. When you go to the children, the elderly, the disabled, that statistics and that report should not surprise us all. But also healthcare, hospitals, clinics, everywhere are crumbling because of corruption, mismanagement, but above all, the austerity measures that have gutted, these facilities and, ensure that they are understaffed, with, shortages of nurses, of doctors, but also all sorts of specialists alongside medication and equipment. So these are actually graveyards where people go to die and not to get treatment. So all of that is what you know. And I think we'll be speaking about the crisis of housing, which is one of the most, serious indictment against really the failures of this government to deliver on the most modest elementary needs of the working class since 1924.
Yeah, in that press briefing with the South African Human Rights Commission this afternoon, we heard many of their complaints having to do with socioeconomic rights. Now, when you get into the issue of socioeconomic rights, the matter of housing certainly comes up, right? And perhaps we get into this part of it, of where we balance human rights with the resources that government has to provide housing and some of these basic services to people that set up informal settlements. So, Mr. Bonono, I'll bring you in here. A good evening to you as well. Just last week, we saw Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi, where he held a briefing. And in that briefing, he talked about that we have a problem of informal settlements that are rapidly growing across the province. He said we've seen more than 400 new informal settlements cropping up in recent times in this province. And that's a substantial number of informal settlements. I don't know what you make of that. But he says that they intend to demolish these informal settlements at 2 a.m. Your initial reaction to hearing that as Abahlali?
Yes, Naledi, thanks. This is a great concern to us as Abahlali Basemjondolo, the Sheikh Dwellers movement. This is an all-out declaration of war on the poor, and only the protection given to our rights by the Constitution and the law. Lesufi, if he continues to try these threats, it will be direct and cross violation of our law. It is unfortunate that the marginalized people in this country, Naledi, all the time when the country goes to a crisis, on the leadership of this country cannot give a clear direction to the marginalized people in this country, the blame would be shifted to the people. And it was shocking that while the Premier of Gauteng announcing this war on the poor people, and he was announcing the report that it's showing that how reckless the government and slowly to deliver the very same promises of service delivery on the people of this country. And it's very shocking to hear those such statements coming with the very same Premier that you're going to be seeing them across the informal settlement election coming next year, casting and campaigning for vote for the very same people who they are claiming today that they are undocumented. And Naledi, this is shocking news that we live in this country in South Africa, a country that has a law, a country that is clear that you cannot carry any eviction without any order, court order from the rule of law. And this is unfortunately that as poor people of this country, we must always be taken for granted, and we must always be blamed for all such things that are taking place in this country.
Yeah, I do want to say that we had in fact extended an invite to Reverend Chris Nissen, Commissioner for the South African Human Rights Commission. He had committed to speak to us. I imagine some challenges there in being able to join us. And we had also reached out to the Human Settlements MEC of the province, as well as the Premier's office in Gauteng government there, unable to join us for this discussion, so that we're able just to be clear that some of the role players not included in this conversation. But the South African Human Rights Commission 2 days ago releases a statement in response to the utterances by Panyaza Lesufi, and I'm going to read from it a little bit. It says, the Commission has noted with concern utterances by Premier of Gauteng, Mr. Panyaza Lesufi, that evictions in Gauteng will be conducted in the dead of night, even at 2 a.m. as part of a plan to take back hijacked buildings and dismantling informal settlements in the province. I mean, where are you in this matter of the dismantling of informal settlements, hijacked buildings, and how government goes about doing it, but the messaging from the Premier, Mamelodi?
I mean, the comrades of our Mtondo, they're right. It is a declaration of a class war. But that's a policy of the class war that this government has been pursuing for some time, right? And what should be shocking us is the fact that only now we're debating this. This morning, I was in a meeting in Pretoria, where a whole group of, small business people that are trying to make a living in Marawa, their livelihood were destroyed. Businesses were demolished. Government that is supposed to be making our cities to work for the ordinary people that are trying to make a decent and honest living is destroying their livelihoods so that then they can join a queue of the unemployed, of the SRD grants, and we come here and vilify people for dependency syndrome and all that, slanders that we normally hear. The reality is, the ANC has come to recognize that not only have they not been able to resolve the problem of housing, as they've not been able to resolve the problem of unemployment, of healthcare, of education, every major crisis facing the working class. In actual fact, these problems has worsened under their rule. And we just have to look at the factors themselves, the figures themselves, right? They inherited a housing backlog of 1.5 million in 1994, right? That housing backlog today stands at 3.7 million houses in this country. 17 million people are living in informal settlement in this country. Their housing program nearly has collapsed. At the height of it, they delivered just about 240,000 houses. That was in 1999. That was a year of the highest performance of their RDP housing program. That has come down to 75,000 in 2019. By 2023, they built only 25,000 for the entire country, right? So their housing program has completely collapsed. In a situation where their entire system is in crisis, what we are seeing in the economy is a job bloodbath. The other thing we have to be talking about, the collapse of the industries, including construction, that is supposed to be building these houses and of course, overcoming the infrastructure backlog. And they just have no solution to that crisis.
You know, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say the argument, though, was made by the Premier in that point that he was making is that at the same time, you do have communities that are struggling to access basic services continuously, whether that be water and electricity. When you have informal settlements that are being set up adjacent to those communities, then needing to share resources with them. And the Premier essentially saying, how do we then deal with that? That people that are in illegally positioned sites needing to be provided services when ratepayers are struggling to get consistent access to basic services. So it's an issue of human rights versus capacity, and we'll get into that as well as we continue with the discussion. But I also want to get your calls on it. Be part of the conversation by calling 010-594-6010. There's the number at the bottom of the screen. Or send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584. Lizike is in Pretoria. Lizike, good evening.
Yes, how are you, my dear?
I'm well, sir. Thank you so much for calling.
I'm sitting here and look at the news, the way you are regarding this thing of a land eviction and then land illegal whatsoever, sharks or whatsoever.
Sure.
I believe that we have people of Sanko. I also believe that we have leaders. But if you can go and look at into that place, the very same that place that is being get by fire, you will find that there's the leaders, that the place that I'm looking to the news right now, where they say there are some of those Mukukus that's been banned. If we can have whatever, if there is any identification of a land where they say we are going to put people here, there must be a verification saying that, okay, these are the people, they are looking for a place to stay. And can we verify, firstly, before you put these people in there, we verify these people. We say, okay, we have something like 200 people. They are looking for this point of position.
Yeah.
The only thing that we have realized is one.
Okay.
People occupy land, start to build shacks, making people to pay for 500 rand for each shack. That is why we are not going to, at the end of the day, the Premier, when it's saying into these things, you find that someone is getting something like 10 shacks. People that are paying 1,000 rand each or 1,500. It's earning 15,000 just for sitting at home doing nothing.
Okay.
Let's have people, when you identify a place, let the leaders verify first. Is this place suitable for the people to can come and stay here?
Yeah.
You see, the municipality people going to be able to give these people the service.
Yeah, that is the challenge that the Premier has raised, Lizike. Thank you so much for bringing that important point, though. And we're going to tackle some of those questions asked and points raised by Lizike on the other side of this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. So we continue with this discussion that has gotten not just the South African Human Rights Commission talking, but various organizations as well that are concerned around some utterances that were made recently by the Gauteng Premier. Of course, threatening that they would see the demolition of illegal informal settlements in the dead of night, talking about that possibly taking place at 2 a.m. But what is it that needs to be done then to deal with informal settlements? And of course, we continue our conversation with Lawyers for Human Rights and abahlali basemjondolo. But we're taking your calls. Lindelani is in Tembisa. Lindelani, good evening.
Good evening, Masita.
Yes, thank you for calling. Talk to us.
Yeah, man. I strongly disagree with what Panyaza Lesufi said during this week. When he was promised the people who are occupying the illegal, the people who are staying in the illegal informal settlement. Those people, they've been staying for such a long time in a back doors. Back rooms. And when you destroy somebody's house, like they're spending millions rand. Whereby, how about they use that money to destroy the money that they have to pay for people to destroy the houses too. To develop those quarter camps so that tomorrow, whenever they come and say ask us to vote, we can go and vote freely. Now they are aware of the foreigners, people who are in our country, undocumented. But they're not saying anything about that.
Okay. Okay, yeah, Lindelani, thank you so much. In this issue of informal, not informal settlements, apologies, the issue of illegal migrants also coming to the fore twice now. But let's just bring in Mr. Bonono of Abahlali baseMjondolo. Again, just the argument that we go back to that the Premier made, that of course has gotten the South African Human Rights Commission to respond, is he talks about the resources. Water, sanitation, electricity. You've got what he talks about as informal settlements, people that are not supposed to be at the land that they're at, and then protesting and saying, well, now that we're here, we demand water, electricity. He says the resources, he argues, simply aren't there to provide all of that at the expense of ratepayers. What do you say to that, Mr. Bonon?
Yes, Naledi. First and foremost is that we need to correct this, that the growing number of people who are building their homes on occupied land in the cities is not due to criminal syndicates. It is due to 4 factors. That the first one is the crisis of mass unemployment in this country, and millions of people who cannot find work and a livelihood in the rural areas. Of course, they have to move out in their areas and come to the cities. And it is a very same failure for our government for not building those formal houses for everyone in the country. And again, when those people when they are in the cities and they have their desperation and occupy the land, and when as I'm saying that, some of the accusation that the people who are informal are undocumented. But if you look at the statistics, that tells us straight that 81% people who live in informal settlement in Gauteng are people who are documented and within this country. And all those people, these people that are within the right of having an access to basic services such as electricity. But we know and we are clear that the issue of land that is unfinished in this country, it's one of the problematic that people, when they migrate from the rural areas, come to the cities because of the negation of the very same government that they don't want to develop the rural areas. So everyone is forced to come in the cities. And yet people, when they come to the cities, and then they start having a problem that everyone is coming overcrowding in the cities. Our government has to take a responsibility that how do we go back to the rural areas? How do we make sure that we close the tap that continues chase people from the rural areas come that. We need to build those infrastructures that the people chasing to come and live in the big cities. So we are clear that the blames of basic services, people that are living in informal settlement are due to be also serviced within about the rights that are there for us, that we must have an access to the resources that of our country.
Yeah, you know, it's this issue of just how quickly we build houses continuing to coming up, and I wonder how we're going to deal with that. But Mr. Sibe making some interesting points about that a little bit earlier, and we'll unpack that. Let's quickly take a call, though, from Dennis in Rustenburg. Dennis, good evening.
Can I come in? Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
What I want to say is people who are in informal settlement, 90% of them are foreigners and illegal foreigners for that sake. So if ever they are documented and then you start talking about human rights, you will understand. So if there is a budget, that budget is being done according to the statistics, the numbers, and whatever. You understand?
Okay.
So the electricity, they are using electricity for free. They are using water for free. They are using land free. Everything what the lawyers saying it is for human rights.
Okay.
More especially the foreigners. So
Okay.
our people are in rural areas. I'm saying in Rustenburg. You can take Ramutana. You can take plastic bin. You can take all those informal settlements around Rustenburg. 90% of them are illegal foreigners.
Okay, Dennis,
So
I think your point is made, and I need to move on. But here's the thing, and I mean we say the numbers, right? 90% of people in informal settlements are illegal foreigners. But what is the real data? And that is the real question, right? We heard Mr. Bonono of Abahlali Basemjondolo, his data saying 81% of people in our informal settlements are in fact documented South Africans. How do we deal with that? Busi is in Nkomazi. Busi, good evening.
Thank you very much for putting me on the program. The issue is that as South Africans, we are residing with these people, and we know their realities on the ground. Recently, we've had an operation of Uvalum Code, and the majority of the people found there were children. Children are being smuggled into the country, and they're staying in illegal informal in settlements. Even in Johannesburg, there's a place called Plastic View. Illegal immigrants are perpetuating criminality. They are running rampant in the name of human rights. Stanley, these human rights organizations, are they for illegality? Are they here to cause chaos in this country? Are they here to render South Africa to be a dumping site for illegality and all manner of criminals? For instance, we are blacklisted as a country. We've got criminals who have taken over Johannesburg. Our CBDs are nothing but a septic tank of criminality in the name of human rights.
All right, Busi, thank you so much.
Children must not be protected. Human trafficking must occur in the name of human rights. No.
Okay, Busi.
Human rights lawyers.
All right, apologies. I'm just in the interest of time. But your point certainly is made. And this is the issue, Mr. Sibe. People are frustrated. And perhaps you want to look at the issue that I was raising earlier with Mr. Bonono around the resources what Gauteng government does. But this issue of illegal migrants, as you can hear from our viewers, coming up over and over and over again.
The issue of illegal migrants is like that of, now of the people in informal settlements. You have a ruling class that is incapable of overcoming the contradictions of their own system. And of course, the crisis that has been created by their own policies. And what does it do? It finds the scapegoats, blame and begin to bash and dehumanize victims, right? All along there's been migrants, but you can see where they're going now. In Western Cape is people from Eastern Cape. Now we're told that all the people in informal settlements are just criminal. That's the criminalization of poverty. Let's just for a second take this point that they're making. As I've said, there are 17 million people in informal settlements in this country. The highest estimate of foreign migrants, documented and undocumented, it is somewhere between 4 to 5 million. The highest that I've seen. That is approximately 4 to 5% of the population and so on. So the idea that all these 17 million people are, of course, I mean, you just have to look around. Who amongst our people don't know or have any relative who doesn't stay in informal settlements, one or the other? The reality is this. Government has failed at two levels. One, there's a law that says government is under obligation. Special Planning and Land Use Management Act that says local municipalities, provincial government must adopt special planning framework where they're able to say, this is a problem that we have, this is their land needs, this is how fast they are growing. So now 10 years, 20 years, we'll be having this amount of population. This is a land that we're going to set aside for that development, right, of housing. Within that, there are these people that are going to require public housing from RDP program. This is what we are setting aside by way of the amount. So there's a land question, there's a housing question, in respect of which ANC and all the mainstream political establishment have dismally failed. And that is because one thing all of them are united on is an austerity neoliberal program that obviously have massively redistributed wealth to the tiny elite who are, of course, promoting these sensational narratives that are scapegoating the poor and all surplus populations that have created. People, they can find houses for them, people, they can find jobs for them, people, they can find, facilities for healthcare, for schooling. They are now developing narratives to blame and bash the same poor, people that are a result of their own crisis. This is a crisis that we have. And I think Abahlali baseMjondolo and other communities must begin to organize and mobilize, because only and unless we begin to educate people, the facts and the figures are there.
Okay.
That this is where the crisis comes from, this is what the solution is, and of course, we'll be able to move forward and find a just solution to all these problems of unemployment, housing, healthcare. Every of these problems we can be able to justly resolve.
I've made the argument for years that we can talk about most problems that we have as a country. The toughest question to answer is how do we solve it? And on the other side of that break, we'll hear some recommendations. Of course, Mr. Sibey, they're saying structures like Abahlali needs to organize themselves. What is it that they would do, though, if they had the ear of the Premier on this very issue? We'll get into those recommendations after this. Stay with us. Welcome back. Of course, you're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We've got live visuals there, as you can see, on a situation that is playing out in Mamelodi, a hostage situation that has played out since 8 o'clock this morning, it is believed. We've got our reporter, Ngobile Madlala, who's there keeping a close eye on it. And so we'll keep you updated. But it is believed that a 32-year-old police constable believed to be inside this particular home that we've got a visual on, with his mother and a 14-year-old boy, holding them hostage since 8 o'clock this morning. It's believed that's when reports from the community came out, and it is believed that 2 shots have been fired. So still a lot of questions around what's going to happen next after what is more than 12 hours of that hostage situation playing out. Police trying their very best to communicate with this 32-year-old constable, and real concern around just the safety of those in the home and the efforts, of course, of police to try and reach him in a way that, of course, is going to ensure that those inside are released safe and alive. But a concerning one there, and we'll keep it on the corner of your screen as we keep you updated. But let's go back to our discussion as we close this one off, and that is the challenge of illegal, or rather, let's call them informal settlements in Gauteng that has brought some contention to the Premier Panyaza Lesufi after threatening that they would be demolished at 2 a.m. The South African Human Rights Commission and various other structures having come out quite unhappy with the sentiments shared there by the Premier. Let's take one last call on this one. Maxwell is in Pretoria. Maxwell, good evening.
Good evening, my sister, and good evening to your guest.
Yes, thank you so much for calling, sir. Talk to us.
The problem that we have in this country is our borders that are open for everybody to come in unaccounted. In the north of Pretoria, we've got many informal settlements that even the politicians, they know about that one. But they are reluctant to act. My worry is the timing from our Premier Panyaza Lesufi, because we're heading to a local government election. Most of the promise that those people are making, most of them, they don't fulfill. If there is a way, we've got a lot of high employment for only South Africans that are here. But you've got the Merimi situation that I'm talking about. Most of the people that are coming there, they're coming far from the north, but they're not doing anything, the politician, about that situation.
Okay.
They want to grandstand when it's almost about the local election or an election, while they sit with the problem that they know there is unemployment. There is a lot that a lot of South Africans are facing every day. But at the end of the day, no action is talk, rather than walking the talk.
Oh, Maxwell raising the issue of the upcoming elections as well. Thank you so much for that. Let's take a look at 2 WhatsApps that have come in from our viewers. Anonymous says, good evening, Naledi. The utterances by Premier Panyaza Lesufi are concerning. Firstly, the idea that informal settlements are occupied by undocumented foreign nationals is untrue to some extent. Yes, they don't buy electricity and water, which in turn affects those who are law-abiding citizens. Anonymous, thanks for that. Carmen says, hi, Naledi. As it is, informal settlements are dangerous to police and also other public duties to be carried out. Structures are too closely compact, and it's also dangerous for children and women. Housing is in crisis, but informal settlements are more problematic. It needs to be contained. Carmen, thank you so much for that. Let's move towards closing this off. And Mr. Bonano, I'll let you give us your final thoughts. If you had the ear of the Premier on how he deals with this issue moving forward. Of course, Maxwell also raising the fact that the local government elections are coming up next year. So these politicians, of course, their words going to be scrutinized so much over the next year.
Yes, Naledi, it is true that what we have heard to the Premier, it's really inhumane. And it's very shocking even to hear other people, how they may think of other people who are living in informal settlement. And I would love to also be conscious on them that they must always think that some of them, they are people who are living in this informal settlement, who are the grannies of this country, people who are disabled of this country, people who, children who are in this country who are attending schools, and because of desperation, are subjected to live in these inhuman areas. But in all, Naledi, what I could say to the issue as Abahlali baseMjondolo, we always were willing to engage the government or to outline the issues that are facing people who are living in informal settlement. First and foremost is we always want to tell them the problem of our government is that when they see people who are living in informal settlement, is that they think that everybody wants to be a burden of this government. But not everyone who are living in informal settlement is a person who are waiting for the government to come and build the house on them. We are clearly saying, if they can release the service size stand where people, they can be able to build their own houses. The criminality that they always accuse people who are living in informal settlement, there's criminal in this country. There's police, there's a law enforcement that they can deal with that.
Okay.
But the fact that now they are failing the leaders to deal with the crisis of criminals in this country, and they're always going to blame that whoever who lives in informal settlement is informal settlement, it's a criminal.
Okay.
But we are always open, as we are saying that we are willing to engage even the Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi. We have members in Gauteng. We have a number of informal settlement and people that we are working with on our movement.
Right.
And we are 100% that are documented as South African. And we want to sit in the table and provide solution.
Yeah.
And if he continues to threaten our people, he must be able to know that we are going to resist in the street and we are going to resist throughout in courts. We cannot take any more of this violation of our dignity anymore.
Yeah, Mr. Bonano, thank you so much for that. Mr. Sabe, final thoughts if you had the ear of the Premier?
Well, I don't really think I should be wasting my time with this lot. Here's a point. The thing is, this elite that has been redistributing wealth, and clearly they are committed to the interests of the tiny elite that has monopolized the ownership of the economy, of the land, of the resources in this country, right? The policy that they pursue from the tax policies, they have cut taxes for corporation from 50% to 27%. The interest rates policy that always make me and you and other ordinary people in this country pay high interest rates that led to dispossession of our house and everything in the interest of very few that are owning financial assets in this country. They've created the most unequal society in this country. What we do need is more organization of the working class people in communities to coordinate. For what? We need to be able to demand a mass public works program. It should be a scandal. It's actually a crime that you have, the 100 over century old, best construction and engineering firm in this country, Marian Roberts, under liquidation at the time when there's 3.7 million houses to be built, at the time when our roads are having potholes, at the time when you have bridges collapsing, and of course, there is a massive shortage of healthcare, of education facilities, and so on. We should be putting hundreds of thousands and millions of young people to work in rebuilding the public infrastructure, essential for realization of many of these rights in the Constitution. But this elite is simply incapable of that, And I think the working class must organize and take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, Mr. Mamelodi is saying the working class must organize and invest in infrastructure development. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure having you, and thank you so much for your time. Mr. Mqapheli Bonono, Deputy President of Abahlali Basemjondolo, as well as Mamelodi of Lawyers for Human Rights. Do stay with us. We've got your headlines on the other side of this.